absolute hot mess of a report we got today on the jobs numbers for the last year. Yeah, I'm not going to bury the lead. Saw it in the thumbnail there. 911,000 less jobs were created through March of this year than were, projected or what they previously thought. And again, these revisions happen all the time. Like, it was understood that there was going to be some revision, but nearly 1 million jobs less were created than what people had actually thought. I mean, that's again, shocking, by the way. It's upsetting on a number of levels, but no one should be surprised. And why? It was a presidential election year. There's no way you can trust what the government's actually putting out. They're going to be fudging numbers somewhere across the way, either through without being specifically directed, but they're going to take the most positive way to spin it for all the reasons that you expected it. And now we're getting the numbers. And again, I would just take a look that they're being told, hey, let's take a look at these numbers and we revise them and try not to be as gracious about it as you can. So do I think it was 911,000 less than actual? No, I'm certain there's more reported than were actually created. It's something that we see all the time in all the numbers. Specifically, if you look month to month, this is pretty common that the numbers are always revised downward. They're never as rosy as we think that they are. So we're gonna take a look at an article today from CNN. Spends a little bit more time on this, but folks, this is why we struggle so much in the business world. If you're in finance, if you are in policy and in the somewhere in government, whatever you happen to do, we depend on these numbers in order to make the best decisions that we can. And frankly, this is why people just don't trust it and they have a hard time. Man, it's almost 1 million jobs. It's just crazy. So again, for those that don't know, my name is Ryan Howell. I'm a business coach that works out of West Michigan, around the country. West Michigan, not Michigan. Sorry about that. And I come here live on YouTube pretty consistently, sharing information I share with my clients, and I hope to earn your subscription. So let's get into it. Again, link is going to be in the description down here somewhere, so be sure to check that out. U.S. job growth through March was significantly weaker than previously thought. Yeah, it's pretty garbage. Let's say 911. Let's see what they have to say here. Jobs market been running much lower gear than previous thought. And again, U.S. economy added about 911,000 fewer jobs initially estimated for the year ending in March. So again, this is from March to March, right? And that's what I was saying. When you look at this, the vast majority of the job numbers per se were when they're counted, were during the presidential election year. So you've got to take all that with a grain of salt. No one that I know really takes any of the government reporting during the year. Really, all that during an election year, all that I want to say is here reliably. It just isn't something to do. However, you still need to be able to use it for if you're in finance, right? If you're on the stock market, if you are obviously looking to trade certain things, you need to know what those numbers are. But you're up against everybody else. That's what we're dealing with here. Now, if this were to hold, the final annual benchmark revision will be reported in February 2026, right? And I imagine it'll be adjusted again. It would be the largest annual revision to jobs data on record. The expected but significantly large preliminary revision comes as the BLS in the throes of upheaval. Again, President Trump got rid of the last individual, and Erica and then claiming without evidence that she rigged the July jobs report to include larger than typical downward revision. Surprise, it's even bigger where it's at right now. Now, Trump administration officials excoriated BLS. They did White House. Okay. And then the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, she did her thing. But with this report showing that Trump was right and claims that the Biden economy was a disaster and the BLS is broken. Now, what I would say is that every administration during a presidential election, the numbers are garbage. So just remember that. And I don't think the BLS is broken. You gotta remember, what they do is they take they're having to estimate off of jobs, and they are trying to do their best guess on what things are going to be at as far as for job creation. And they're looking at any number of basically of the data in order to make whatever predictions and estimations that they have, and then they come back afterwards once they can see the actual payroll data to see if it actually exists. So they're trying to do it as best they can in real time to give us an estimate per se, and then revise it later. Well, what I want y'all to take into account here is that, let me bring it over here so I can show us here. So here's the current, let's say last year was, they report this number, right? Let's say this is 10. And then 2 months later, they revise it down to 8. And now we are in a year later and it's revised down to 6. So that's what you typically see, constantly down the path here. And I know there are research reports that exist out there to be able to show, but honestly, you should really take about the number that you want. Let's say it's reported. Let's say 10,000 jobs were created last month, whatever it is. When I'm advising my clients, I say, listen, if you're curious about this number or any of this stuff here, make it 60% of whatever that number is. It's going to get revised twice in some way, shape, or form. And if you go with 60 percentile, you're going to be fine there. And that's really where I tell these folks to spend their time, is that these numbers, they are an estimate when you get them. And you've got to make sure you have something in place there to if your job, if you're making forecasts and budgets off of this, what I recommend is say, hey, let's just add a 60th percentile to it. So really, if they report 10,000 jobs, we're really saying it's going to be 6,000 jobs. That's where we operate with my clients that I work with. All right, let's get back into this here. I'm not really worried about what they have to say. The Trump administration is sowing doubt in an agency that for more than a decade has been sounding the alarm bells about being too underfunded and too understaffed to implement the necessary practices to modernize data collection, analysis, and reporting. And that's why one of the things that we're looking at out in the stock market, right, on Wall Street, and also for the economy, we also look at the ADP job reports, right? There's payroll stuff that comes out. We're constantly looking at multiple data sets to not say front run, but to validate whatever the government's going to come out with. Because again, you're going to see those numbers are never going to be right. And even with ADP, there's revisions that happen. Now, White House economic advisors have been conducting a review and assessment of BLS data and operations preparation for a report expected to be sharply critical of the agency, according to 3 people familiar with the matter. Okay, yeah, and everyone knew that. Tuesday revision. Now, this is the one of the key pieces here, folks. Tuesday's revisions release is the first step in BLS's annual benchmark review of jobs data, a process taking place in some shape or form going back 90 years. Economists say the outsized revisions are in part a continued spillover from a global pandemic that threw the U.S. economy on its head, as well as indication of a labor market that's in a time of transition. This is a really nice way of saying that all of the money that was pumped into the economy around 2020, beginning 2022 is gone. It's worked its way through the system, and now the BS jobs that are out there are going away and people aren't hiring. Now, that's one aspect of it, right? I mean, that's just what it is. All of the stimulus that happened is now gone, and it's completely messed things up. Additionally, I guarantee you the government does not know how to account for AI jobs that are that exist. They just don't know how to look at that, because the number of positions that are coming and going and coming all are constant. One of the things you're seeing too is the companies having to make these decisions in real time. They're overfiring and now having to rehire and all this stuff. Like, it's just been a hot mess for the last 2 years, and it's not getting better anytime sooner. All right, every year BLS seeks to provide a near complete employment count by squaring the past jobs data from business surveys, more timely but not as accurate, with comprehensive unemployment insurance quarterly tax filing, right? But with that, that's highly accurate, but significantly lagging in timing, right? Now, the preliminary benchmark revision of 911,000 came in on the high end of the estimates and accounts for 0.6% share of overall employment. The annual benchmark revisions during the past 10 years had an absolute average of 0.2 of total non-farm employment from the data, as what the BLS data shows. Now, let's jump down here to see the probable causes for revisions. This is interesting. I always enjoy looking through this. Economists said Tuesday the massive revision was probably attributable in part to the pandemic, subsequent economic environment throwing out of whack so-called birth-death model. Anyways, let's not even go with that. I think that's just kind of a garbage excuse. Now, the overestimation of new firms versus those that have gone out of business is part of the seasonal residuality problem that continues to bedevil data-based estimates that have not yet been properly adjusted following pandemic-era shocks. It's just basically a word salad saying they haven't figured it out and they're really not sure what to do. Okay, all right, okay. This is quite like challenges in adjusting data following years following great financial crisis. BLS birth death model has well-known issues in capturing declines in business formation and bankruptcies. 1/4 of the preliminary estimated revision was in trade, transportation, and utilities sector, which had an estimated downward revision of 226,000 jobs, or almost 0.1% of the employment. However, the information sector, which encompasses technology firms, looks to be revised down by the biggest share on a percentage basis. Preliminary estimates show a downward revision of 67,000 jobs, or 2.3%. There's pretty broad declines across the industries, etc. So you can go, again, links into the description. Go check this out, folks. So here's what I really want you to take away from this, and this is what I'm telling my clients about this. The numbers are showing what we already knew, right? During the last year and a half or so, it's been very difficult to believe the job numbers were really what they were, right? They kept saying, oh, we've added these numbers, we've added this number, we've added this, when all we're seeing is consistent layoffs and people not getting hired, and unemployment rolls going up, and the long-term unemployment, and everything except for the jobs report showed that their jobs were not there. They were not being created. So we now have this revision. So what do you do with this information? Again, with my clients, nothing. That's really what it comes down to. This was a known quantity. It just wasn't known how big of a revision this was going to be. And it just goes back to show what, again, we are all working through and trying to figure out here, is that in a world where we can't necessarily trust, and it's, again, please take the necessarily the politics out of it, it's more of the government as a whole, that we can't trust the quality and the timeliness of the government reporting, let alone the private sector reporting for what the numbers are. How are we supposed to make decisions on future forecasts, budgets, etc., and expectations for the economy, making adjustments? And what it is what I go back to with all my clients. We are going to look at as many pieces of data as we can, and we're going to look for trends. That's what we're going to do. And that's what I recommend for all of my clients, what I recommend for you. You should not be using a single data point that comes from the government or anyone else to make any decisions. There is a reason that we want to look at these numbers in a holistic manner, right? We want to get like a mosaic of what's going on. And that is where it's your responsibility, if you're a business owner, again, as an individual, might be trading, finances, whatever it happens to be, to get as much data as you can and then look at trends, right? So you should be looking at all of the data over time. It was very, very, very easy to look at this data and over the last year and know that the numbers were being fudged. You could just tell. Now you don't know how much. That is the thing. And that's where we come with that 60th percentile. Like, we always use that 60% of whatever's reported, and they say that's probably what it is, to be able to account for that monthly revision and then the annual revision. They're always revised down. Okay. But with that, if you're getting data on, here's the number of jobs, you're getting another report on, here is the number of firings, here is real estate, how much office space is being used, all of these different things that are readily available and readily reported. You can look at trends over time. And that's what I recommend for all my clients to do. Let's just look at that data over time and see where things are trending. And then when you have that data, now you can start making forecasts. Now you can do your budgeting and other things like that. Okay. So that's where we're at. Now, for everyone who's here so far, like I said, I stuck this long, I want to take a quick second and take a look at this other article I had from Starbucks. You guys get like a bonus one today, all right, on the live here. So I appreciate everybody who's hung out this long. But I was just looking through this. I want to send this over to a friend of mine here who's in the industry, that I just wanted to laugh about this a little bit. Not, I guess laugh isn't the right way to say this, but it's interesting what we're hearing from the folks in Starbucks here. Starbucks barista claims workers are being abused, right, in quote, under new CEO rules. A Starbucks barista and bargaining delegate, right, so keep that in mind, bargaining delegate, i.e. With the union spoke out of how employees might be feeling following a number of big changes at companies. Let's take a look here. Got to work on their latte art here a little bit. All right. Employee has spoken out about recent changes the company believes are driving, let's see here. Yeah, these are driving staff to misery. Diego Franco works in Chicago and has been a barista at the global coffee giant for 5 years. revealed the new changes that were lowering morale across the stores. All right, let's see if we can find what this is. We are, all right, this is a conversation under the new CEO, Brian Nickel, who got paid. Look up how much that cat got after his first year. It's pretty significant. We are abused verbally, and the manager will then point out the things that we're doing wrong. So what do they mean by that? I'm pretty sure it's happened hundreds of times since we've been forced to write on cups after being yelled at by a customer for the long wait. He added, Franco's complaints come after CEO Brian Nickel launched the Back to Starbucks initiative. Nickel plans to make Starbucks the world's greatest customer service again, all right? Go under the new employee guidelines. No custom drink order should take longer than 4 minutes to make. This includes some of the most popular beverages like the famed pink drink and the secret menu frappuccino variations. The changes also involve a change of barista uniforms, right? They're all in black now, right? That's black with the, and again, the branded clothing, black t-shirt, okay? And then what do we got here? A spokesman for Starbucks contacted Fox Business, said that Franco's comments, the stores were based on a sentiment only from one source. Starbucks offers the best job, $30 an hour. So let me just be clear on this. This cat is upset. This guy's upset, this individual, rightfully so, that employee and customers are getting upset with them because they're writing their name on the cup. That has, you know, and it's because we got to get the drinks out in 4 minutes. So they're upset at, right now, from a bargaining standpoint, this is where this is coming from. They're upset that they're getting yelled at by customers, and then they're taking it out on the CEO because the CEO says, hey, you have to write names on the cups now. And this is, again, I will go back to this one. If you are yelling at your barista, you're just an awful person. Don't yell at your barista. Don't do that. Do not do that. There's no reason to be yelling at the baristas. That's just crazy. But if you are the barista and you've got to get your drinks done and figure that out. Now, I go to Starbucks periodically. I do it for to just see how well they're doing, because it is one of the companies I own shares in, that I just kind of like to keep an eye on, see where it's at. Yeah, it's normally takes me between 4 and 5 minutes to get my drink order. That's about standard where it's at, because there's other people in front of me and whatnot, and they write my name on it, and I've been fine. I haven't had any issues. And sometimes I order the extra frappuccino-y thing just to see how long it takes, because I'm just curious more than anything. And it takes 4 to 5 minutes. That's where it's at. But for the employee to go to and report this thing saying this is the CEO's fault that the customers are being jerks, that's not anything to do with the CEO. So this is one of those nothing burgers. I thought it was interesting though, and the reason I'm bringing this up has to do with they are going back to renegotiate here in a little bit, the union on all these changes and everything. Like they're gonna go back, and so they're just trying to add little bits here. So what I would recommend is, I've been recommending to the Starbucks unions for the very long time here, y'all need to take a longer view on this thing and stop looking at these short-term frustrations, because all you're doing is undermining your bargaining position. Because I promise you, because I've talked to people on this and I've seen it on the interwebs and everything else, no one cares. Like, no one really cares that your job is you have to wear a standardized uniform and that you have to write names on cups. Like, no one really cares. So you're not going to win any sort of, in the court of public opinion, you're not going to win that argument. So just go away from that. Go back to the things that you want to make sure that you're negotiating and bargaining for, okay? That silly stuff, it's going to distract and make it not worth your time and energy, okay? So with that, I appreciate everybody who hung out this long. Hopefully I earned your subscription today, folks. Be sure to get your coffee.